Thank you very much from the choir. We are going to ask Bishop Mpumlwane to give us an opening prayer.
The eternal God is your refuge, and underneath are the everlasting arms. Eye has not seen, nor ear heard, nor the heart of man conceived what God has prepared for those who love Him.
The Lord be with you. Shall we stand to sing the Lord's Prayer? Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive them that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. Almighty God, neither death nor life can separate us from your love. With the whole company of the redeemed in heaven and in earth, we praise and magnify your glorious name, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, one God, blessed forever. Amen. Please be seated.
Our scripture reading this morning is found in the New Testament, Paul's letter to the congregation in Thessalonica. 1 Thessalonians chapter 1, we're reading the first 4 verses. 1 Thessalonians chapter 1, the first 4 verses. Paul, Silvanus, and Timothy, to the church of the Thessalonians in God the Father and the Lord Jesus Christ, grace to you and peace. We always give thanks to God for all you and mention you in our prayers constantly, remembering before our God and Father your work of faith and labor of love and steadfastness of hope in Jesus Christ our Lord. For we know, brothers and sisters, beloved by God, that he has chosen you. This is the word of the Lord, and thanks be to God. Amen.
Let me respectfully observe the protocol. And again, let me secondly acknowledge and respect all expressions of faith that are with us here today. As the scripture lesson has been read, I want to read it again. We always thank God for all of you, mentioning you in our prayers. We continue to remember before our God and our Father your work produced by faith, your labor prompted by love, and your endurance inspired by hope. We are all yearning for the comfort and succor of God in the midst of our pain. And now I appeal to the family and all of us to allow our souls to become reflective on God's goodness and mercy. What I know, God may not take away our pain in our hearts, but all I know, He can balance our pain with His joy. I know that He is our comforter by day. I know that He is our hope. He restores what is broken. He is our all. But I know too that the grim reaper death does not speak the last word. God speaks the last word. And His word is good. The writer stresses the importance of remembering. For people will forget. But where people forget, God remembers. And we as God's people have no right to forget what God remembers. If we forget how we made it, God has a way of making us to remember. This afternoon, we have been permitted by God to celebrate the life and the times of Tatu Zola Skweyiya. Yes, an outstanding cadre of sterling qualities whose unselfish sacrifices made such an indelible and lasting impression to us. It is also an opportunity to give God honor and glory for the life of Tatu Skweyiya, a man who unequivocally gave his all. We celebrate to reflect and recapture the relevance of a man whose untiring and unselfish sacrifices brought us to where we are today. We must call to mind that he helped in the shaping popular thinking. He not only instilled in us a legacy of self-help, self-worth, and self-determination, but he also instilled in us discipline and sense of belonging. For a brief interlude, God allowed us to bask in the warmth and in the sunshine of this very strong man of God, who showed fortitude and had an indomitable spirit. He allowed hope to feed his soul, and in so doing, he became a living testimony that we are to meet tribulations with triumphant fortitude. Tatu Zola Skweyiya operated from a base of freedom. As I conclude, there is a need to remember and to call to mind that not only the gifts and graces, but also let us remember Tatu Zola Skweyiya's work produced by faith, his labor prompted by love, his endurance inspired by hope. He did so walking with God. It means we are to thank God again and again and again, yes, again and again, for Tatu Skweyiya knew that God's call is never about self. Rather, it is about being a blessing to others. Tatu Skweyiya knew that his God is incomparable in his glory, that his God is unequaled in his splendor, that his God is unparalleled in his compassion. Neither history, nor humanity, nor the ages, nor nature offer him anything. In God, everything is extraordinary. To the family, if you believe that God, yes, he can, and make it your family chorus, God will replenish and restore. As a result of your pain, you ought to make some gains. Your prayer ought to grow deeper. Your faith ought to be strong. Your hope ought to be fortified for the sake of Tatu Zola Skweyiya. May you have a new level of grace, a new level of mercy, a new level of God's presence. God will keep on raising you up. God will keep on supporting you. God will keep on sustaining you. How blessed you are to know this afternoon that God accomplishes what God starts. What God promises, God performs. What God declares, God delivers. What God begins, God completes. He can take you from bitterness and brokenness to a blessing. God bless you all.
Eternal God and Father, whose love is stronger than death, we rejoice that the dead as well as the living are in your love and care. As we gather to remember with thanksgiving our very special Zola Skweyiya and all those who have gone before us in the way of Christ, we pray that we may be counted worthy to share with them the life of your kingdom through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. May this occasion of thanksgiving and commemoration be inspired by your guidance. And to God the Father who loved us and made us accepted in the Beloved, to God the Son who loved us and loosed us from our sins by his own blood, to God the Holy Spirit who sheds the love of God abroad in our hearts, to the one true God, may love and all glory for time and for eternity. Amen.
Thank you very much, Bishop Mpumlwane and the religious leaders. Thank you for the soothing words. Ukusibopha manxeba to the family, ukuba ubaduduze ngaso sonke isikhathi. I'll take this opportunity to introduce myself. I'm your program director today. My name is Susan Shabangu. So I'll be with you this afternoon up to the end of the program. What I'm going to do now is that we are here to mourn Zola. We used to call him Zola, some of us, but also to celebrate our leader. His contribution in the liberation of South Africa, his contribution in the transformation of South Africa, our democracy. What we enjoy today, it's what he stood for and fought for. This is the leader at the beginning of 1994, became the first Minister of the Public Service and Administration. He transformed and contributed to the transformation of the public service which we have today. But it did not end up there. He also played a critical role when he was the Minister of Social Development in ensuring that the poor of the poorest in this country are able to live on a day-to-day basis. Hence, we celebrate his contribution in ensuring that we have what we call SASSA today. That's his contribution. What we need to make sure as South Africans, it's to ensure his contribution is not lost. His work must always be remembered. I want to call upon our musician, or the Judith Sipuma.
Lord, I lift up mine eyes to the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord who made heaven and earth. He said he will not suffer thy foot to be moved. The Lord which keepeth thee, he will not slumber nor sleep. For the Lord is thy keeper, the Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand, upon thy right hand. For the moon by night, he shall preserve our soul, even forevermore. Oh, my help, my help, my help, all of my the Lord. I will lift up my eyes to the hills, from whence cometh my help, from the Lord which made heaven and earth. He said he will not suffer thy foot. The Lord which keepeth thee, he will not slumber nor sleep. For the Lord is thy keeper. Lord is thy keeper. He is thy shade upon our head, upon our head. Oh, the sun shall not smite thee by day, moon by night, he shall preserve Lord. You're my comfort, Jesus. All of my help, it cometh from Jesus. All of my help, it cometh from the Lord. All of my help cometh from the Lord.
Thank you very much, Julius, for the soothing music. It is soothing. Eh? Oba nakso Julius. Ngitheni kanti? I thought ngithi Judith. Ngitheni? Oh, Thixo Nkosi yami ndiyaxolisa. Ugcwela phezulu engqondweni zethu ndiyaxolisa. Thank you. We are going to move on. I'm going to call our first speaker. I'm going to plead with all the speakers. I'll give each speaker 10 minutes. Please help me to manage this process in a way that ensures it gives everyone an opportunity to pay tribute. I'll continue saying Zola, because that's, to me, he was Zola. He was a minister, but to me, he was a Zola all the time. Sis Bridget, it's you which I would like you to come and pay tribute to Zola.
Master of Ceremonies, Madam Minister, the family of Skweyiya, Tutugile, Deputy President of the country, of the African National Congress, former President Mbeki, Sizanele Mbeki, ministers, NEC members, leaders of political parties here, traditional leaders, members of the diplomatic corps, I greet you all. I am very grateful for the honor of attesting to the greatness of this man. I thought I should come in from an angle that's rarely spoken about, because so little is known, so little is written. I'm going to talk about Zola Skweyiya as leader of the constitution-making process, believe it or not. I should start by reminding us that one of the important decisions of the Kabwe, the 1985 Kabwe Conference, was the establishment of the ANC Legal and Constitutional Affairs Department. OR, the late president of the ANC, appointed Comrade Zola to head the Legal and Constitutional Affairs Department. The team was situated in Lusaka, comprised of the late Teddy Pekane, Dr. Pekane, Comrade Dr. Penuel Maduna, Comrade Sandile Nogcina, Africa, Comrade Jobodwane, Comrade Matthew Posa, and myself. Comrades Albi Sachs and Kada Asmal were associates working from abroad, but always in consultation with a team that was situated in Lusaka. The department provided other ANC structures with legal and administrative support. It worked closely with the ANC underground, in particular with lawyers from progressive formations handling ANC cases. The department was also linked to anti-apartheid formations internationally, law associations in the US, etc. Members of the team were often assigned special tasks assisting the underground. It is credit to the skillful leadership of Comrade Zola that, delicate as the tasks were, they were efficiently executed. I'm not here to tell you the nitty-gritties of what was done. By the end of 1989, members of the legal department were assigned tasks relating to post-apartheid policies. Inevitably, they were roped into the work of the political work, the underground political work. I also want to share with you the other side of Zola. All of us as human beings are layered. We are layered. Zola, beyond politics and office work, was a caring person. He loved children, and I learned this in Lusaka. At that time, I was a single parent as my husband was doing his bit with MK. Comrade Zola would carry my last-born Sibusiso and play baby games with him. They grew attached and remained connected into Sibusiso's adulthood. In June 1990, the NEC of the ANC, Comrade President Mbeki, I hope I'm telling the truth, that this was properly sanctioned. But Comrade Zola Skweyiya led a team that was deployed into the country. I was one of them. We were to assist with the establishment of post-apartheid policy units, building on work done by the underground, and we were to prepare for negotiations. At this stage, the Constitutional Committee of the ANC was firmly established. It was expanded to include senior lawyers from inside the country. These were senior lawyers based in the country. I can just mention a few, but there were quite many. I would like to start by mentioning the core group that were runners, so to speak. And here I'll mention Bulelani, I'll mention Dala Omar, but of course the late Chief Justices Pius Langa, Arthur Chaskalson, Justice Louis Skweyiya, the late Kada Asmal, our Justice Albi Sachs. These were some of the people who were members of the ANC's Constitutional Committee. I mustn't forget George Bezos. But then there were many, Fink Hesom. I must share with you and say, because ANC ayisabi criticism, ayifanelanga isabi criticism. The big critique of the appointments, of the establishment of the ANC Constitutional Committee was the fact that there were no women appointed, even from inside the country. I think this, you can guess now, spared some of us that going forward, women must be at the center of decision making. Our committee was based at the Community Law Center, and I'm sure there were good reasons why the Community Law Center of UWC was chosen. Comrade Dala Omar was made head of the center. So Bulelani, myself, Comrade Zola were, you know, initially the team that moved in and out of those offices as they were being established. Of importance, and here is the strength of the comrade we are talking about, is that Comrade Zola could work with the head of the center. He remained the chair of the ANC Constitutional Committee and was, of course, the conduit through which we send reports back to the NEC from the work that we were doing. He worked very well with Dala Omar. In fact, Dala Omar used to call him Put Zola. They go Put Zola for everybody. He was a warm and affable person. The center became one of the important research bases of the Constitutional Committee. It was working closely with other centers. Immediately at UWC, there was the CDS. But of course, the community law centers, the CLC, and others were feeding into the work of the ANC Constitutional Committee. Again, it was Zola's leadership skill of coordinating, of linking up people, of winning the trust and being respected. I must say that Zola also was a very inclusive person in the style of work. He immediately set up to establish networks of experts in the various fields. At the center, we had numerous workshops, seminars, roundtables, conferences. I must also point out, of course, that Zola had tried to unite the BLA and NADEL because he believed, and he said it openly, that there is the challenge for transforming the legal sector was immense, and it required these progressive forces to unite so as to have the kind of impact that is necessary for actual transformation. That was Zola. I must say that through these inclusive processes of consultations, of networks and everything, many people rightfully claim to have participated in the conceptualization of the new constitution. I'm talking long before the Constituent Assembly, long before the drafting of even the interim constitution. Zola was affable and collegial, recognizing the strengths of all those he worked with, and expressed passionately his views. I must say that Uzola ubenenyani. During our meetings of the Constitutional Assembly, Constitutional Committee, when we were discussing, you name it, structure, even the details of the Bill of Rights, he made very strong submissions, passionately so. I must tell you the big one was language. And I don't know, I wish I had asked him whether he remembers how passionate he was about the return of the land to the people. That was Zola Skweyiya. On a lighter note, you know, when I got spirited and quite talkative, putting my points across, he would bully me and say, "Mauzole, Bridget, Mauzole." I miss him for that. I'm about to finish. But I also want to share with you another light moment. You see, me and Zola had been working for the ANC, you know, as volunteers, and never even thought for a moment about a payment. But when we went to UWC, we got paid. So, but we didn't know how to use an ATM. And it was thanks to the former Deputy President Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, the current chair of UN Women. He helped us and showed us how to use an ATM. Here is what I want to say in conclusion. If we are to honor Zola's legacy, and in the spirit of the ANC tradition of saying we pick up the spear of the one who falls, the spear we have to pick up is that those that have power, occupying strategic positions in society, must use their power for the betterment of our people. Zola was concerned about the number, the depth of poverty amongst our people. He shared this very much with many people. I'm one of the people with whom he shared his concern. I thank you.
Thank you, Sis Bridget, for sharing that with us. Indeed, Zola was very, very honest. And in his life, he never mixed his words. He said what he wanted to say, and those Minister Khadebe who were in cabinet with him, they knew if he believes in something, you can't persuade him. He will believe in that, whether you agree in the majority or not, but he'll say and make his point. That's Zola. I'm going to ask the chorister of Soweto to give us an item, and immediately after that, I'm calling Tatu Mavuso Msimang azokwazi ukuba asiphe intetho naye.
Send this one, go on,
Thank you very much, Program Director. I extend the veterans' condolences to the bereaved Skweyiya and Mazibuko families. Protocol requires that I recognize all the dignitaries and officials who are present here at this special memorial service, and I will do so with meticulous precision without naming any name, really. Save perhaps to greet the Deputy President of the Republic of South Africa, Mr. David Mabuza, and the former President of the Republic, and Mrs. Mbeki, Zanele. I do hope you find this in order. The diplomatic corps too. It's equally important, though, that I also greet the very many people who are here who came to the meeting with no specific titles attached to their names, who came because of their appreciation of Dr. Zola Skweyiya's illustrious accomplishments in life in the service of the ordinary people. Indeed, that is what Zola Skweyiya's life was about. No one who knew, allow me also to say Zola, I will like him, we respect him, Dr. Skweyiya. Allow me to say that anyone who knew Dr. Skweyiya would not be unaware of the fact that he was a very honest person, that he carried himself with admirable dignity, that he was respectful almost to a fault, and then those who lived and worked with him would also know how committed he was to the cause of liberation. Dr. Skweyiya died when he was a few days short of his 76th year. He was among the earliest young volunteers to answer the leadership's call to arms after the apartheid regime had banned the ANC and the organization itself had decided that it wasn't going to die. He abandoned his academic studies at the University of Fort Hare in 1961 and left the country and traveled via a very circuitous route that eventually took him to Egypt. There he was trained in guerrilla warfare. Circuitous for this group meant clandestinely crossing international borders, mostly without passports. Being assisted by Dr. Kenneth Kaunda's UNIP members, UNIP, United National Independence Party members, as the early freedom fighters headed north towards Tanzania, towards the Tanzanian border. Zambia was still called Northern Rhodesia at the time, and Tanzania was Tanganyika. Getting to Egypt involved a truly slow route on the Nile River, across the entire Sudan. I guess today I should say South Sudan and Sudan. Military training in Egypt was rigorous and at times very risky. One of the exercises involved crossing the Nile while holding onto a rope that was strung up in the air across the channel, and then releasing it would happen on the command from which you dropped onto the surface of the river with a lifeboat ready to take you to the shore. It really was no business for sissies, this. Further year-long training took place in Moscow, then capital of the Soviet Union. This was advanced training stuff that was dished out to the 23-person group who were there. Here the group was given the whole gamut of weaponry, from a revolver, a pistol, light machine gun, machine guns, bazookas, and rocket launchers. Then there were lessons in topography, the manufacture of explosives, homemade, because we never thought we would have access to TNT and other things easily. And there were lessons in topography. We were also taught Marxism and Leninism, dialectical materialism, and the class analysis of the struggle that we're going to be engaged in. Zola and his great friend Duncan Khoza took a lot of comfort and knowledge in this dialectical materialism. They used to joke that when they got back home, they would not say to the children, "Stop fighting now," but they would advise them to stop antagonistic contradictions and rather resort to a peaceful solution of their problems. Zola received specialized training in radio communication. So when the Wankie operation took place, it ended up being Wankie. It was intended to be that in the beginning. Across the river, there was General Ngapai, I don't know if he's here, carrying a radio to communicate with the forces behind. A roll call of the 43 people who first completed their training and went to a place called Kongwa would include names like Zola Skweyiya, of course, Zola Zembe. The two of them passed recently in March and April. There would be Andreas Mutsipe, Lambert Moloi, Duncan Koza, Goodman, Mencheka Moloi, Abinene, Joshua Mwaku, Charles Mahambi. They are all gone now, their mission fulfilled. To bear testimony to the fact that they were there, you would still have around with us here today Lieutenant General G.L. Romano, called him Mwema, Toi Shabalala, 83 years of age if he was a day, Eric Keshamtali, General Noshe, and a few others. It is a vanishing species. Comrade Zola's task in Como was to listen to various international radio stations and present news to us as we stood up in the formation and understand what was going on around the world. As more comrades returned from training in Odessa, in Beijing, in Czechoslovakia then, the MK ranks in Congo swelled. We had thought it was going to be a transit camp where we would spend no more than 6 months. As they say, the rest is history. Before too many people start writing the story of the Lutuli detachment, to which Comrade Zola proudly belonged, here is just a little bit of it. Little bit of it. In 1967, a group of MK and ZAPU people crossed the Zambezi River, fully armed. Their mission was to set up underground military bases in Zimbabwe and in South Africa. They are crossing at a carefully selected spot, and the gorges completely fooled the Rhodesians. On the day they crossed, O.R. Tambo took his place on the northern banks of the river, and tied to a rope, he slid down to the channel to bid the comrades farewell. The crossing was delayed because ANC President Chief Albert Lutuli had died on the 21st of July, 1967. It was to honor him that the detachment was subsequently called the Lutuli Detachment. This is a title that was to be expanded to cover everybody who volunteered to go and fight before 1976. Very recently, in conclusion, we watched a documentary called Winnie. It told a story. It invited those of us who are still around and many others who may have stories that have not been told to make sure that we contribute to the writing of our own story. Just a brief tribute to Zola Skweyiya. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that tribute to Dr. Skweyiya. May I call Professor Nkomo and followed by Vusi Madonsela to pay their tribute in honor of Zola.
Mrs. Skweyiya, the Skweyiya family, today is a different day. It is different, but also very special, because we're celebrating a life which has made significant contributions to the change in South Africa. I shall specifically focus on what I've titled Dr. Zola Skweyiya, the architect of the South African Democratic Public Service. He is certainly the architect. And if you read what is in the program, you realize that he was driving the whole process. A few quotations which are very important for us to keep in mind. The first one is about the public service still remains the cornerstone for the current and future success of South Africa. This is where significant resources are committed, both human and financial. Another one, I used the word the public service. I shall refer to how this word came about. The term public servant or public service did not guarantee future employment in the state machinery. It was about professionalism, efficiency, effectiveness in service delivery. The public came first rather than individuals in office of power. The term placed more focus on earning respect from public servants. That was Dr. Skweyiya's dream, ambition, and vision. Let me go back a little bit again. I want to quote what I wrote a couple of years ago in The Thinker. If it is possible that there might have been errors in the bilaterals and the multi-party negotiations, and subsequently thereafter, then the founding mothers and fathers of democratic South Africa had at least put their shoulders to the wheel. As Theodore Roosevelt articulated it, I quote, "The only man who never makes a mistake is the man who never does anything," close quote. Today, people talk about the public service, people sold out, this happened. But the fact of the matter is that the focus on the public service was very central from Dr. Zola Skweyiya's perspective and point of view. Let me mention a number of people who participated in the activities of the public service to change and create a public service that works. There were the Mandela Mandarins, Sipho Makana, Cindy Somfenyane, Eddie Funde, Tony Mongalo, and Josiah Jele. These were individuals who were working with Dr. Zola Skweyiya to actually try and find a way to build a competitive public service for South Africa. International collaborations were very important for Dr. Zola Skweyiya. Why were they important? They were important because he wanted us to search for new knowledge for the South African public service. He wanted the public service of South Africa to represent the wishes of the people of South Africa, the majority of the people of South Africa. Dr. Skweyiya believed in the emergence of a South African epistemology framework for public administration. He was not dogmatic or ideological, but he wanted us to travel the world and study how other public services were functioning or not functioning, and making sure that when we create the South African public service, it should be second to none. He wanted South Africans to be the custodians of their own forward-looking and progressive destiny. I quote him, Understanding our own political economy was the solution for the creation of an effective, efficient, progressive, driven public service, driven by the people of South Africa. He did not want to see South Africa degenerate into a dictatorial state where human beings would be oppressed by the machinery of the state or the machinery of government. Hence, he embraced and advanced the notion of Batho Pele, the people come first. Professionalizing the public service was very key to Dr. Skweyiya. Hence, he participated in the founding of entities like CAPAM, the Commonwealth Association for Public Administration and Management in England, where I accompanied him. The creation of the South African Association for Public Management and Administration, very critical to him. He was also a person who was a mentor to young individuals. He wanted to see young people to come into the public service being mentored by senior people so that they could learn from them and become good public servants. He did not want the public service to collapse. As admonished by the late President Nelson Mandela, I quote, this is what Nelson Mandela said, "I do not want the public service to collapse, because if it does, the whole of government will collapse," close quote. Dr. Skweyiya made sure that this understanding was carried forward to the end. In my view, Dr. Skweyiya was not a politician. He did not seek power or the accumulation of power, but he was a statesman of high regard. He understood that the public service must be placed within the guidance of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and maintain neutrality in the running of the state. He interrogated the centralization of power and laws. He held the view that communities still have a strong say in contributing to the development of South Africa and the delivery of services. He was also worried about the political administration interface, Hence, he held the view that the public service should be neutral. Zola Skweyiya tackled at the last minute one of the critical aspects of creating an effective and efficient system of governing the public service. Whilst many did not understand its significance, Dr. Skweyiya embarked on a successful mission through the bilaterals and the multi-party negotiations to interrogate and reconstruct a public service that was based on the principles different from apartheid. Hence, he rose to become the first minister of the public service in the emerging democratic state of South Africa. It is for these reasons that in 1994, South Africa's best brains were attracted to the public service, and the search for good governance was the order of the Nelson Mandela period, together with Dr. Skweyiya as leader, as minister. Under his leadership, the language of the public service was changed to English, for those who may not know what the situation was. It was changed to English, and the reason was very simple. He wanted all South Africans to be able to understand what is the public service about, what is the public service communicating to the people of South Africa. With these few words, I want to thank Dr. Skweyiya for having given some of us as young people the opportunity to engage and be part of a process of creating a viable and dynamic public service. I want to also announce today to Tugile that we are working on producing not a chapter or an article, but to produce a book on that period which goes back to 1994, and we want to feature Dr. Skweyiya prominently in the writings. Thank you.
Madam Program Director, in particular Bishop Mpumulwana, if my voice should tremble, please do not be alarmed to imagine that I am overcome by stage fright. It might just be that my Kairos moment is upon me. Director of Proceedings, members of the Skweyiya and Mazubuko families, Deputy President of the Republic, His Excellency David Mabuza, former President Mbeki and Mama Mbeki, members of the National Executive Committee of the governing party and alliance leaders, honorable ministers of cabinet and premiers, deputy ministers and members of the executive councils, members of the diplomatic corps, traditional leaders, honorable veterans, my colleague directors general, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow South Africans. Greetings to you all this afternoon. Mama Tutugile Skweyiya's call, which reached me at about 600 hours, on the morning of that fateful day, April 11, 2018, in which she informed me that she had been invited to come to the hospital that instant, gave me much consternation. When she went on to request me to ask Bishop Malusi Mpumulwana and Reverend Sidwal Mokhotu to join her at the hospital, it immediately felt like I had been on that path before. That notwithstanding, I still hoped for the best. Her subsequent call, which came at about 7:15, in which she solemnly informed me that Dr. Zola Skweyiya had passed away, unleashed a thunderbolt of shock, which was so hallucinatory in its intensity and rendered me numb for a long while. I sought to convince myself that I did not get the message right. However, the media announcements which quickly spread throughout various platforms confirmed the evil tidings which have now deeply afflicted us all. Dr. Zola Sidney Temba Skweyiya, a venerated ANC stalwart and decorated veteran of Umkhonto weSizwe, an unpretentious political colossus and a true servant of the people, departed this world, shy only 3 days for the completion of his 76th year of his age. Being a characteristic public servant that I am, I have decided to defer to Dr. Zola Skweyiya's contemporaries, his comrades in arms, to detail his illustrious political contribution to the struggle for liberation of our motherland. In this tribute, therefore, I shall confine myself to how my colleagues and I at the Department of Social Development experienced him in his capacity as Minister for Social Development, a position he held from 1999 to 2009, in the course of which I had the distinguished honor to serve under him as Director General for a period spanning over 7 years of his tenure. Of course, it is held upon all hands that it was upon his passionate blessing and recommendation in 2003 that Cabinet, under the leadership of former President Thabo Mbeki, elevated me to the highest echelons of the public service, much to the chagrin of some of my colleagues who considered me very young and perhaps even less known in the public service. I am personally indebted to Dr. Skweyiya and his cabinet colleagues of that time and subsequent cabinets that I have had thus far the prodigious honor of serving our country for a cumulative 15 years of uninterrupted service as Director General in 3 distinct government departments. Accordingly, I deliver this tribute principally from a profound conviction that it is the performance of a duty which is incumbent upon me to fulfill. Though, even on this ground, I may not successfully appeal to your forbearance as its hearers, I trust you will permit me to allude to a peculiar difficulty I have had in writing this tribute, especially as it relates to aspects of my personal relations with Dr. Skweyiya. Over many years now, Dr. Skweyiya had become a father figure to me. Therefore, I hope you will appreciate that to give to the world the details of a private life not intended for public consumption, though it may occasion no injuries to the fame of speechmakers themselves, who by habit are often careless and hasty folk, who are often excitable and rather careless persons. It is far otherwise in the case of those about whom such details are concerned, especially about Dr. Zola Skweyiya, who had made it a cardinal rule of his life never to have shared publicly anything about him that was not carefully measured, strenuously labored, and minutely finished. I therefore trust that you will forgive me if such details do not come through in this tribute, despite a view held by some among us about their eulogistic merit. Indeed, the most mournful and lamentable passing of Dr. Zola Skweyiya has called together here today distinguished personages from all walks of life, including representatives from civil society formations, academia, professional bodies, religious networks, and ordinary folk whose lives Dr. Skweyiya has so deeply touched. In addition, this occasion has also drawn from retirement many venerable veterans and stalwarts of our struggle, some of whom fought in trenches side by side with Dr. Zola Skweyiya, men and women we all so much respect and honor. I get the sense that I'm about to run out of the time that I thought was allocated to me. The veterans and stalwarts to whom Dr. Zola Skweyiya was so much attached, who retained that attachment with all the uncommon ingenuousness and enthusiasm of fearlessness, political commitment, and ardent, deep-rooted minds, are here to manifest their own sense of severe deprivation, as well as their admiration of the bright and shining political example which they have so much loved to contemplate. An example, let me say to them, and let me say to all, as a solace in the midst of their sorrows, which death has not really touched, and which time cannot obscure. In particular, this mournful occasion also brings hither multitudes of current and former staff members of the Department of Social Development who for many years worked their tails off to deliver on Dr. Zola Skweyiya's 10-point plan, to transition the vision and mission of the Department of Social Development from welfare. Among the 10 points, I beg your pardon. Let me conclude, perhaps, in order to respect the decorum of the occasion, with the words from Omar Khayyam, a Parisian polymath and poet who lived in the 11th century, who had this to say, I quote, "With them the seed of wisdom I did sow, and with my own hands labored it to grow. And this was all the harvest that I had reaped. I came like water, and like wind I go. May his soul rest in peace." And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for those words. Thank you, Vusi. I'm going to ask Putuma to render a song for us. After that, I'm going to request Mr. Charles Ngakula to pay tribute to Dr. Skweyiya.
Just call on your mama. Your mama won't do you no good. Just call on your mama. Your mama won't do you no good. Just call on your mama. Your mama won't do you no good. Crying on my Lord, oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do? Somebody's calling my name. Somebody's calling my name. house. Somebody's calling. Driving on my Lord. Oh, my Lord. What shall I let me hear you say, oh, somebody's calling. Somebody's calling my name. Somebody's calling. Somebody's calling my name. Well, let me hear you say, somebody's calling, driving on my Lord. Oh, my Lord. What shall I do? Driving on my Lord. What shall I do? What shall I?
I would like to align myself with the recognition which has been given to all of you by the previous speakers. The other day, at a prayer service at the Skweyiya home, one of our stalwarts, Professor Skweyiya, spoke. And introducing himself, he said to the mourners, I am the youngest person here tonight. Later on, I said to Bishop Mpumlwana, I should have stuck my hand up in order for me to also introduce myself as the oldest person in that room in the circumstances. Because Professor Skweyiya told us that he met Comrade Zola for the first time in 1974. I met Comrade Zola almost 60 years ago when I arrived at the Lovedale Missionary Institution for my high school education in 1959. There are just a few things I want to pick up during that period on Comrade Zola. The first one, President Thabo Mbeki, relates to something that has not really gone into the annals of the history of struggle in this country. The establishment of the African Students Association. Because there are many people who think that the first organization of students in South Africa was the South African Students Organization. No, the ANC had established an organization for students called ASA. Comrade Zola, in fact, the first president of that organization was Comrade Thabo. Comrade Zola was the chairperson of our branch at Lovedale. I'm raising this because there are certain things that Comrade Zola did as a disciplined member of the ANC and that particular organization. One time we went to Hilltown. I hope there are some people here who were at Hilltown at the time to play rugby. That team, which was a very good team we were playing against, gave us a real shellacking on the field. But they also beat us up off the field. I don't know what our students from Lovedale would have said that made the students from Hilltown to respond so physically. And some of our students could not even board the bus that we were taken to travel to Hilltown. They had to run most of the time back to Lovedale, which is quite some distance, considering that I'm talking about an institution which was around Fort Beaufort and ours around Alice. That's quite some distance. But there was going to be a return match. And the students at Lovedale were saying, we are going to show them. We are going to be so physical that none of them will leave Lovedale. They will have to be taken from here straight to hospital. Now, there was what was called the Victoria Hospitals in Lovedale, not far from the institution. In a meeting of the African Students Association, Comrade Zola said, it is our responsibility to convince the student body here that we can't attack one another. We still have this mammoth task on our hands to create conditions for unity, not only among us as students, but we need to unite all of those who are oppressed in order for us to fight for our liberation. Of course, when people from Hilltown came, the violence that was threatened did not happen. Later on, we played Fort Hare. At the time, Fort Hare had stars. Almost the entire team played for the provincial side. It was called Border Rugby Football Union at the time. And no less than 10 of them played for the national side. You can imagine, therefore, what kind of team we were playing. But on that day, we outclassed them. One of the stars of the Fort Hare team was one of our own, Sobizana Mngana. He was a recognized fly-half in South Africa. Of course, he could not be the #1 fly-half, because at the time, we still had Eric Majola. Now, Eric Majola had no peer in terms of that particular position. So, Mngana was not on the field of play, but he was agitated because we were outclassing his team. So he moved along the outline and was pushing those from Lovedale who were there. Got to Comrade Zola, pushed him away from the line. Of course, Comrade Zola moved off. He still went to him and said, didn't you hear I said, get off the line? And Comrade Zola said, but I'm a meter away from the line, which was a yard at the time, but I'm a yard away from the line. And Sobizana attacked him. We all came round because we wanted to assist Zola. But Zola said, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Even in this situation, we can't fight one another. The next time I saw Comrade Zola was at the Cabinet conference, which has already been mentioned. Before that, the last time I had spoken with him was at a trial where Judge Zola Skweyiya was rendering a service. At the time, he was an advocate. and we started talking about Zola because he had recently been hauled by the special branch to interrogate him about a statement Comrade Zola had made over Radio Freedom. But when we met at the Kabwe conference, I was so excited, he also was excited. Because you can imagine, the last time I had seen him was in the early 60s, and now this was 85. Of course, in the fullness of time, we were back in the country. But I do want to say that the Kabwe conference was possibly one of the best episodes of the history of the ANC. Because there, the delegates were discharging a task, in fact, an order given to them by Comrade O.R. Tambo, who had said the 80s must be the decade of our liberation. Therefore, Kabwe was expected to produce a program that indeed would make the 80s that kind of decade. And I have been arguing that he was correct, because if truth be told, we got our liberation by the end of the 80s, because early the following year, 1990, certain things started to happen. Our organizations were unbanned. Madiba and the other leaders who were on Robben Island were freed. Then I found myself part of the cabinet when Comrade Thabo was the president. Now, Comrade Zola had a curious turn of phrase which he would use when he wanted to make an input, particularly on critical issues under discussion. He would raise his hand, President Mbeki would recognize him, and he would say, but I think it was tongue-in-cheek. He would say, I have a little, he would say, I am a little bit very much concerned. After that, of course, he would make his input. But his input was always intended, and it succeeded, to push us in a direction which we had overlooked, but which was critical to the issue under discussion. Comrade Zola, Tangana, Steve Chwete, and Maduna, had some unit, which you will have to forgive me, it was actually a drinking unit. Now and again, I found myself in there. Now, I don't drink, you can ask Bishop Mpumlwana. I don't drink. The only time I drink is a little bit of wine, which is less than a teaspoon when I go to church. And I'm sorry, my wife is here, and this has nothing to do with her, but I don't go to church that often, which means, in all intents and purposes, I don't drink. Now, during those sessions, my goodness, you listen to the kinds of discussions. Invariably, of course, Tangana, when he was trying, because we would be discussing, and Tangana would be saying all manner of funny things. And when we challenged him, he would say, listen here, you boys, I'm older than you. And he would say, even if I was born only 1 minute before you, I'm older than you. 6 weeks ago, we went, my wife and I, to see Comrade Zola in hospital. Immediately we came round his bed, he raised political issues. we discussed politics and he was becoming agitated, and we say, but please, man, let's do this, which we have done in the past. When you are discharged, we were under the impression at the time that he was going to be discharged the following day. This is what we were told. And this is what the doctors had said to him and to Tukile. So we will discuss when we get back home. Then we went abroad and received a message that Zola was critically ill in hospital. And of course, the rest is history. But Comrade Tutukile, I am very happy that once upon a time, I did walk together with this giant of our struggle. I was doing research a while back, and I met people who were together with him at Kongwa, where they trained as soldiers. And I was told about an intervention that Comrade Zola made there. I'm sure you will understand that. If you take young people, and these people are very young, man, in their early 20s, you have young people that you have trained to carry and use weapons of war. Then problems, if you do not deploy them immediately after their training, will arise. And part of the problems, then, Comrade Mabuza is here, he will attest to this, where that then divisions started to arise. And some of those divisions were ethnic, while others were even regional. Now, one faction from the Western Cape tried to mobilize Comrade Zola to be part of those factions. And Comrade Zola said, we must not do this because it is against the policies, practices, and traditions of the ANC. Bye-bye, Nzwana. Bye-bye, Comrade Zola. We are happy that you never sold out our struggle. Amandla.
Enkosi mhlobo, I'm saying this because Sis Tutu, when I said Mr. Charles Ngakula, he said he comes to the front and he says, "Intoni ndithi ndu Mr. Ngakula." So ndiyaxolisa comrade wam mhlobo, bendithi ndiba formal. We're going to move to the next item. I'm going to ask Judith Sipuma to give us an item. If I can have the tribute now, which will be done by family members. Zola Skweyiya, Standiwe Koroge from the Mazibuko family, Nopila Komote, on behalf of the grandchildren, after the rendition of the item.
Oh my God, I cried in the daytime, but you answered not. I'm not silent and don't find rest, but you are holy. You who dwell in the holy place, where the praises of the Lord they reign. to him who alone does great wonders, for his mercy endureth forever. Let the people, let all the people, let them praise his holy name, for his mercy endureth forever. To him who gives us, Father, you give good life. Abundantly, for your mercy endureth forever. Holy, 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 holy are you, Lord. Holy you are my Father. Holy you are Jehovah. Holy is the Lord, for your mercy endureth. Lord, let the heaven and the heaven and the earth, let it proclaim that your mercy endureth forever. Father, you are holy. Oh, your mercy, Lord, it endureth forever. Father, we praise you. Lord, we praise you. We lift your name on high. Oh, your mercy, Lord, endureth forever. For your mercy, it endureth forever.
Ositiko ufihliwe nokonti kuleleyo akubona kalisiwe tifunayo. Umama ophethe inkonzo kuthetha ke umama ungakwazi ukhumja, kuba uZola uzalwa ngamaXhosa angakwazi ukhumja, wafunda ke yena nabanye wayilanto. So ndizathetha ngelwimi lasekhaya kwaXhosa. Ndiyabulela mphathi wenkqubo, ndibulela nabefundisi bethu kuba sinakwenza nto ingakhange ikhokelwe ngabefundisi, kuba lo mntu mapha ngumama womanyano. Mandize ke kuZola okanye lo uthethayo apha, nguNontobeko kaSkweyiya. uZola ngumfowethu. Thina ke siyifebele enkulu. Otatomkhulu babeyi-6. Kungekho ntombazana yazalwayo. Abanyana batshata banabantwana, yanda ifebele kaSkweyiya. Sigcwalise kwela Kapa ke. Size yagcwala i-airport seat kuba size kumntakwethu ebethanda ifamily yakhe, enenkosikazi yakhe enobubele, ethanda umzi wakhe uthuthukile. Sinethamsanqa ke phaa kwaSkweyiya, sinabafazi abayihlonelayo imizi yabo. Sisuka eDurban kuZola kuthembile. inene samkelwa ngamandla inkosikazi kaThembile. Namhlanje silapha uZola samkeleka. Bakaloku umfazi xa engumfazi ujonga ifamily angaphumi nento zefamily. Sifumaniseke uthuthula enjalo. Into endincomayo kuba babambene nonobandla uSaya. uThixo zabakhusele. Ndize kuZola. uZola uzalwa nguno uZola uzalwa uzalelwe eKapa eSimonstown nguNanziwe. Seningakhathazeki bethu nani xhekwazi na 81. You can imagine. Zahamba nithandabuza. Ningakhathazeki. Uzalwa nguNanziwe. uNanziwe enesisters zakhe ezintathu. No brother wabo omnye ongufikile owayehlala eWorcester. Abanye amakazi bakhe bebehlala eBhayi, uAida noLuiza noTokozi. uZola ufundile sebetshilo abantu abebefunda naye eseHilltown waseFort. Asayazi kuqhubeka ntoni ngoZola akabuyi. uZola wavele weNyamalala asamazi apha khona. Kanti uZola ucross border kabanina ke. uZola ke bekhula ke engumuntu othuleyo. uZola bengayithandi into embi. Angekho umqonde wena. Ungacinga ukuthi umuntu onetshitshi. Hayi, ngumuntu onobubele obuphakathi ungasezumqonde. Ebezelelwe ke Soul River, thina sise Soul River bona bese njengoba besenitshilo. Bona bese eSimonstown. uZola ke ibingumuntu othanda kakhulu umama wakhe ba ebezelwe yanguye yedwa kumamakhe. Omnye cousin sister wakhe besigqiba uthetha ngaye sithi wayethanda kakhulu ngumakhulu. Umakhulu xa uzaba abanye abantwana uzaba ignora ahoye uZola ngenxa yoba wayemthanda. Zinto ke zabazali nomakhulu ezo. uZola ke ufundile ke njengoba senitshilo. Wavela weNyamalala. Kodwa ke kuyonke lonto uZola engumuntu oyithanda ifamily yakhe. uZola uthandile inkosikazi yakhe. Wabathanda abantwana. Ebengumuntu othanda abantwana sebetshilo. Abamphosisi abathanda kakhulu abantwana. uZola. uZola ke lesenitshilo uZola ungumuntu othuleyo. Manje ngathethi kakhulu bethu sizothi ndibhude kodwa ibikhona into eninzi ebendinoyithetha ngoZola. Ndade ndibhude noko nidinwe lelixhekwazi lithethe into engapheliyo. Ndiphela apho ke bethu nani ndixoleleni kodwa ndiphinde ndithi zaba mamela abantu basekhaya. Kukho umntakwethu osuke eBhisho Themba is the only one kumadoda akhoyo. Kuba uThembile ebengekasweleki ibizoba nguThembile ome pha. Ngoku basweleke bonke. Ngoku ushiyeke uThemba from Bhisho. Uthi sisendifike ndinefever ndayifumana le phone isithi iza ngoku. Waqonda uba uphelele akakwazi ungayi uyazi uba kusekho umuntu apha ekhaya. Ndiyambulela uThemba. Endingayishiyanga bethu nani. Ze nixole kwenda ngiyaphinda ukuthi Thuthukile ugcine abantwana bakho. Abantwana bakamfi. Usaya nisoleke nibambene okwendifikile ndinibukela. Ndathi thithi uThixo omkhulu kuba nyani basabambene ababantu. Bafanele ke siyifamily ebambeneyo. Yaye ke mntakwethu ubunechuku uyaphuma wedwa kwifamily yethu. Kuba thina singabantu abathandanayo. Enkosi bethu ndishiyayo ndishiya yemle ayele.
Sanbonan. Deputy President, Mr. David Mabuza, former President Thabo Mbeki, the family of Skweyiya and Mazibuko, the audience at large, all protocol observed. Ngimncane to be standing here. Yes, I am young. But on behalf of my mother, the older sister, Mam Thuthukile, who is not able to be with us today because of health, she has asked me to deliver this letter. Sibonga ithuba uNkulunkulu asiphe lona lokazana nomkhwenyana wethu uDr. Zola Skweyiya. Ekumazini kwethu ube umuntu omnene, onothando, onozwelo. Ubethanda inkosikazi yakhe udadewethu Thuthukile ngenhliziyo yakhe yonke. Bezwana kubonakala noma kubani ukuthi this was a partnership of love and support. He loved her to such an extent that he loved her whole family, her community kwaMashu, where she comes from. Uma ephakathi kwabantu usibari wethu behlala ezithobile, ekhululekile. Okungangokuthi ubengafuni ukugqamisa nokubizwa ngokuthi uminister uma ephakathi kwabantu. Usibari ubengakhohliwe ukuthi siqhamukaphi. Ukuthi abantu ubengakhohliwe, I beg your pardon, ubengakhohliwe ukuthi siqhamuka kuphi thina njengabantu abantsundu. He was a true advocate of the poor. He was never removed from what the poor and their struggles were. Akusimangazanga ngesikhathi njengomndeni sizwa ukuthi uhulumeni umnike ithuba lokuba uMinister for Social Development, because the people have always been his priority. Siyambonga kakhulu, sibonge kakhulu nomndeni wakaSkweyiya indlela bamkhulise ngakhona. Sibonge kakhulu indlela basikhulise ngakhona. Sibonge kakhulu for udadewethu uThuthukile ngakho konke ngoba konke abakwazile ukukwenza emphakathini by plowing back to their children, to everyone that they've contributed to, was because bekuvume yena usibari wethu. Zonke ingane zethu njengamanje sezizimele kungenxa yakhe usibari wethu. Umphakathi wakaMashu kuningi abangakubala abakwenzile ingoba kuvume yena usibari wethu. Kubonakalisa nokubambisana kwabo njenge couple. Sibonga umndeni wakaSkweyiya omkhulise kahle and for the good relations. Ngaphezu kwakho konke sibonga umdali osiphile ithuba ukuthi sikwazi ukumazi usibari. Hamba kahle Mboye, hamba kahle Letha. Usebenzele iSouth Africa. Ulisebenzisile kahle ithuba umdali akuphelona to serve the people of South Africa. Wazikhandla ngoba ufuna ukuthi kube nomehluko ebantwini bakini. Imisebenzi yakho iyokulandela. Hamba kahle, ulale ngokuphumula, sokhumbula njalo. Siyabonga.
Thank you, Standiwe. Uphila
Good afternoon, all in attendance. Umalume, as most of us fondly called him, was a man of few words, and even so, we knew and were certain of his love for us all. He taught me about strength, love, perseverance, even in the presence of doubt, and to have compassion and care for your fellow man in need. Thank you for the love and support you have showed me in the years God has granted us. I loving you called you Malume, but you will and always were my father in the true sense of the word. I would like to recite a beautiful poem called The Broken Chain by Ron Tranmer. We little knew that morning that God was going to call your name. In life, we loved you dearly. In death, we do the same. It broke our hearts to lose you. You did not go alone. For part of us went with you the day God called you home. You left us precious memories. Your love is still our guide. And though we cannot see you, you are always by our side. Our family chain is broken, and nothing seems the same. But as God calls us one by one, the chain will link again. Thank you.
When I heard the news of my grandfather's passing, nothing but shock overcame me, tears coming down my face the second the words came out of my mother's mouth. My urge to drop everything and go to his home as soon as possible was dire, in turn making all of us family members, comrades, and friends becoming united in one big gathering. An unfortunate event causing this, but a beautiful reunion of people coming from it. He was a great husband, father, grandfather, brother. He was all these things and much more. But God knew he had fulfilled his job on earth, and it was finally his time to rest. He made Gogo, who was the love of his life, the happiest woman in the world, showcasing what true love really is when I grew up around them. He took a key role as father to my aunt Mandisa and Pila, my father Vugani, and my uncles Ketuktula and Vuyo. He was a caring and somewhat scolding grandfather. One thing I'll definitely miss is being told off by him that we won't find husbands because of how late we stay up. He had a quirky sense of humor, and he evoked a sense of comfort into a room. His resilience to his sicknesses in his old age was something to be admired, and I never truly realized the significance of his presence in my life until he truly left it. I would just like to say thank you so much, Nkulu, for everything that you've done. Thank you for being the man you are. Thank you for gracing me with your presence into my life. I love you, and you will sorely be missed.
I've basically spent my whole life with this man. Umkhulu was not my grandfather by blood, but he didn't make it feel like he wasn't. Umkhulu and I were bonded by strong ropes of love. Umkhulu was literally the sweetest man I have ever known. I've cried every single day ever since his passing because I lost someone I really cared about and someone who really cared about me. He was literally the best grandfather in the world, and I wouldn't trade him in for anyone. Umkhulu, at school we learned this poem called Indlu Yami Yokuphoxeka, meaning my little shade of disappointment. I left a little space of disappointment in my heart in case you were to leave us because I thought it would help lessen the pain. A part of me knew that this wouldn't help, but it was still worth a try. Mkhulu, I really do miss you. I miss you more than ever. I miss having you around the house, asking me to check your emails, or even asking me how to operate the TV. I miss seeing the TV watch you sleep. I miss your presence. Who's going to tell me that I'm not going to get married because no one wants to marry a girl that wakes up at 11 o'clock? Or tell me that I need to find a man outside of South Africa because South African men are so short and I'm so tall. As hurt as I am by your passing, Mkhulu, I'm glad you're in a better place and a peaceful place now. Trust me when I say we will miss you. Thank you for caring when it felt like others didn't. Do you want to speak?
Okay. On the 11th of April, 2018, at 7:25, it was a regular Wednesday morning, or so I thought. I was in the car with my mom, and I was thinking, I was on my way to school, and I was thinking, how am I going to get my dad to buy me that outfit for the party next week? Because I really want to look fantastic, and I want to stand out. That's when my mom got a phone call from my older sister saying that we should come to the hospital because there's an emergency. My mom turned the car around, and we went straight to the hospital. And in my mind, I was thinking it was one of those things where you get worse, but you will get better. On the way to the hospital, we were informed by the media that he had passed. In my mind, it hadn't clicked that he was gone. But when we got to the hospital and I looked into the ward that he was in, and I saw those blue curtains, I knew the pieces of the puzzle came together and he was gone. I didn't even get to say goodbye, but it's okay. I think what hurt me the most is that he passed 3 days before his birthday, and everybody loves their birthday, so yeah. My grandfather was a loving man who cared so much about family. My mother was always telling me that he loved me so much and that he was so excited that I was going to be born. The gap between my older sister and I is huge, 9 years to be exact. So part of the excitement was that I was coming 9 years later. Out of the many names I was given, Stembiso, Unati, Sibulele, and La Zola made it to my birth certificate. La Zola, yeah, I'm named after my grandfather, which is a huge privilege. It's a privilege because I carry his name, just like my little sister carries his mother's name, Nanziwe. In much that I am saddened by your passing, Mkhulu, whilst many children have not had the privilege of meeting their grandparents, I thank God that I had lots of time to spend with you, and I love you so much, and I will never, ever forget you. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tutu. I'm sorry that Uncle would die and we passed away. I'm sorry that we're here today and we're having lots of fun.
Indeed, we are celebrating life. We are celebrating a mkhulu, an uncle, a father, a brother, a comrade. We can see abazukulu bayamkhumbula umkhulu. But he was not only a mkhulu to the Mazibuko and the Skweyiya family, he was a mkhulu to the nation, because it's Zola who ensured that all children who come from destitute families, when they are born, they have something to take care of them. As we speak today, beginning of April, the child grant now, it's 400 rands per child to ensure that those kids can have something to eat. These are the deeds. This is the legacy of Zola as we speak today. May I ask Judith Sipuma to give us a song.
Zalisidinga lakho Thixo Nkosi yenyaniso zonke inhlanga zonke izizwe mazizuze usindiso amadolo kwelilizwe mawagobe phambi kwakho zide zithi zonke ilwimi ziluxela udumo lwakho singadeli
Ngizacela Comrade Bulelani to pay tribute.
Program Director, Deputy President Mabuza, former President Mbeki and Sis leadership of our Parliament, members of the ANC, Sis Tutu and family. But Charles, what's the story of that drinking club? There's something you forgot. Zola didn't drink. Didn't drink, but he would occasionally have a glass of red wine. Now, the unfortunate thing is that he had this thing called gout, which he inherited from his parents. And one day we were driving in Guguletu with Uput Steve Nye, and we saw an empty beer bottle. And Steve Chwete said to him, you must salute. There's a beer bottle, salute it, kulua. Because I guess so salute. So you forgot that part about saluting. I've worked with Zola for many years. I'm not going to mention because the others mentioned 60 and 50. I'm not there yet. But I want to say this. You probably remember President Mbeki, because it was the first time I also met you. We met in London in 1985, at the time when we were discussing the idea of having a children's conference in Harare. You'll remember in 1985, there was a state of emergency, and many children were arrested and detained under the state of emergency. And so, in fact, the reports went on to say close to about 20,000 children were in detention. We're very concerned about this. And so I was invited to participate in this meeting that was going to discuss what to do about the arrest of the children. And that's the first time I met Zola. He was there with Matuna and yourself. I was obviously in awe of the leadership from Lusaka, because coming from inside, you know, you'll be told Lusaka says this, and you believe it. So for the first time, I came face to face with Lusaka. And I was co-opted into the steering committee of this meeting. The meeting, some of you may remember, took place in Harare. And the patrons of that meeting was Father Trevor Hartelstein and President O.R. Tambo. It's the meeting that saw the biggest delegation ever to come out of South Africa and meet with ANC in exile. And we managed to mobilize very many international guests who were concerned about the situation in South Africa. And that conference was a watershed. We worked very closely with him to the extent that when the resolution that was going to be adopted was rejected at about midnight by the steering committee, Zola volunteered me and Tony to go and draft and to spend the whole night drafting that resolution, which was later read by Bishop Bears Notie. So, from the moment that I met with Zola, he was very empowering. He thrust us into the deep end. He gave us opportunities which we didn't have. And we were then to work together. The next thing that we did, the Human Rights Commission have these sessions every year where they discuss about the issue of violation of rights throughout the world. And there was a session that was dedicated to South Africa. On this occasion, we decided to do something unique because at that time we were based in Geneva. And Zola was the one who was sent there by the ANC to represent the ANC at this Human Rights Commission of the United Nations. So we strategized about it and decided that we were going to invite President Archie Gumede, who was the president of the UDF at the time. Problem, he had no money. UDF had no money. He had no passport. But we managed. Zola was able to go and meet with Dr. Bengu from the Lutheran World Federation, persuade him to make resources available for Archie and his delegation. Ubabu Archie came, accompanied by Moas Mwasheng, using the passport of Transkei. And if you know, Babu Archie was coming from Durban, and he had a Transkei passport. We used that to good effect. I remember that meeting, and we managed to secure prime time. Now, prime time in Geneva is just before the 6 o'clock news, because then you're going to be covered in the news. So Wabu Archie took his stand, and when he opened his mouth, he said, "My name is Archie Gumede. I'm the president of the United Democratic Front." You could hear the pin drop. But the people who were most shocked by his presence were none other than the Americans. They all came, and many delegations came over after I had spoken, because it was the first time people have heard the ANC, and there was Babu Gumede speaking directly from inside the country, the atrocities that the apartheid regime was committing. From there, although Babu Gumede's trip was supposed to be for 3, 4, 5 days, he ended up spending about 2 weeks because he was invited now to go and tour the Scandinavian countries, went to Netherlands. All the anti-apartheid movements in Europe wanted to have a piece of them. Very successful mission indeed. And Zola was the brains behind that. You know, thereafter, I just want to highlight, because as Bridget has mentioned, I was privileged to be invited to serve on the ANC Constitutional Committee. Let me just mention the names of the people who we worked with. It was Arthur Chaskasin, who became the first president of the Constitutional Court, George Bezos, Pius Langa, who followed him as the Chief Justice, Dalauma, who became our Minister of Justice, Professor Kata Asmal, who became our Minister of Education, Esa Musa, who became the judge, Zola Skweyiya was the judge of the Constitutional Court, my sister, President Mabuza, Fink Haysam, Maduna, and myself. We were given a brief which was very simple but very difficult, that the ANC, when it goes to negotiate, it must go in there with its own position. And so we had to develop our own draft constitution so that the ANC can put forward proposals at the negotiation table. Now, I've mentioned these people. I forgot Albie Sachs, who also became a judge of the Constitutional Court. Now, if you know these people, you will know that these are prima donnas. That Zola was able to manage this group and mold it into a unit is a credit to his intellect, to his capacity, and to his ability. We worked very well. We did a number of things. But most importantly, I'm just going to highlight about 3 or 4. We identified what were the key critical areas where we needed to ensure that we mobilize the South African population the mass democratic movement, so that they could support our positions at the negotiations. One of the first things that we identify as a critical issue is the land question. We worked on it, we developed papers, we arranged a conference which Deputy President was in your home province in Mpumalanga. We invited international experts to come and participate. We invited internally legal experts and our own people. We worked hard on that issue. And that Section 25 that you have today is a product of the progressive forces, what you find in that constitution. It was drafted by us. The next thing that we identified, you see, we never had a constitutional court in South Africa. We had a unitary system of the judiciary, magistrate, Supreme Court, and then appellate division. We were worried that if you are going to make the Constitution the Supreme Court, supreme law of the land, and then you have the apartheid judges who are going to declare that the law passed by the democratic forces, democratic parliament, is unconstitutional, that's not going to be acceptable to us. Now, this notion of a constitutional court is something that was first established in Germany. So we had to go to Germany to see how this functions, and we were very impressed, and we came back, and when we suggested it, there was a lot of opposition. And we decided to convene a conference and invited a number of people also to participate and be part of it. And we decided that we'll have the Constitutional Court, but it will be separate. It will be appointed directly. It's not going to be part of the structures of the judiciary. So you find in the first constitution in 1994 that we had the Chief Justice and the President of the Constitutional Court being separated, because we needed to make sure that we appointed our own judges and ensure that the court represents the aspirations and the interests of our people. This is what we did. The next issue which confronted us, and we had to work hard on it, was how to transform the judiciary itself. We worked very hard on it, and again, we followed the same pattern in order to engage the members of the judiciary themselves so that they accept that they themselves were unrepresentative of the society as a whole. Just to give you a snippet of the work that we did. By the time we finished the work that we were doing, we had a draft constitution. The ANC was able to go to the negotiations and present positions on every facet of those constitutional negotiations. And today, 70% of the work that we did as the Constitutional Committee is now in our Constitution. And that is credit to the leader of the team, that is Zola Skweyiya. And so when I come to think about, and reflect what it is that Zola has really done, I forgot to mention before I come to this point. Throughout the work that we were doing, Zola always insisted upon us that we must promote as many black people, professionals as possible. Make sure that in all these conferences, they participate, we give them opportunities to deliver papers. He also arranged for scholarships for them to go on internships to Strasbourg, to University of Lund, to Geneva, to the Human Rights Commission in Geneva. And so we had all these young, dynamic black people being sent all over the world to go and study, to make sure that when we do win and get this freedom, we'll have our own people. I'm happy to say today, some of those women are sitting in the Supreme Court of Appeal, in the Constitutional Court, and in some of our high courts. And that is credit to the work that Comrade Zola did. And also, Zola was a good minister in public service and administration. I say so because, one of the things When I became the National Director of Public Prosecutions, one of the critical things that I had to deal with was the low morale of the prosecutors, the fact that I inherited a prosecution service that was inefficient and ineffective. And so what we needed to do was to deal with low morale, and it had to do also with the salaries. Now the law said the salaries of the prosecutors must be determined by the Minister of Finance in concurrence with the Minister of Public Service Administration and the Minister of Justice. Now you know how Trevor is or was with the finances. Very, very difficult man to deal with. But at least I had put Zola and Dala on my side. So the battle was halfway won. And so he helped me a great deal when I was doing my work. And so I've been thinking that Zola did a great deal of work, social development. Vusi has spoken about that. I'm not going to get into it. But I have to say this. When he was appointed in '99 as a Minister of Social Development, he hated it. He said, when I called him, and yet he found his niche. Zola was committed to the eradication of poverty. Zola was committed to improve the lives of our people. Zola was a man of service. Even my mother said, I am so glad President Big has given us this man. He cares about people. He's a people's person. Uzola ngumuntu wabantu. And so I was thinking then, and I remembered reading something about Napoleon. When Napoleon was sitting in the island of St. Elba, and he was thinking about what people will write and say about him. And he says, my true glory, he said, my achievement is not that I've won 40 victories on the battlefield. Waterloo will face all that. My true glory is the civil code. And so when I look back at Zola's life, I remember that. What is Zola's true glory? It is this constitution of our country. You know, I visited him in hospital on the 21st of March. And I found him there. I went there with my niece. I found him very much improved than what he had been before. In fact, he had been moved from ICU to the general ward. We had a long chat together. I won't tell you about the thing about some of you. Tutukile in particular. And there was also Tlalana. Is fine, and I was leaving the following day. New York. Because that's the memory that I want to treasure for the rest of my life. Zola being in a jovial mood, laughing and joking as usual. Now, there was a committee in Parliament called the Governance Committee. It was a SABC whose task was to monitor the work of Parliament as well as the provincial legislatures. This committee was chaired by Comrade Frini Chinwala, and the members of that committee was Comrade Baleka, Mbete was the Deputy Speaker, Stofile was the Chief Whip, myself as the Chief Whip, Zola is the Minister of Public Service and Enterprises, and then Umaviva, I can't remember, Umaviva was representing also the NEC. Man, this committee would meet day after day in the evenings after the session, and we would complain with Zola about this. I'm completing. And then Zola one day he got married and he stopped coming to the meetings. So I say, but Zola, why are you not coming to the meeting? He said, I'm tired of that committee of the lonely hearts. Let me leave you with this poem by Robert Hayden. And he writes about Frederick Douglass. Some of you might know Frederick Douglass. He said, when it is finally ours, this freedom, this liberty, the beautiful and terrible thing, needful to man as air, usable as earth, when it belongs at last to all, when it is truly instinct, right? This man, this Douglass, this former slave, this Negro, beaten to his knees, exiled, visioning a world where none is lonely, none hunted, alien, this man superb in love and logic, this man shall be remembered. Oh, not with statutes, not with rhetoric, not with legends and poems and the wreaths of bronze alone, but with the lives grown out of his life, the lives fleshing his dream of the beautiful, needful thing. Go well, Nzwana. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade Bulelani. Now that you're talking about the Committee of the Lonely Hearts, we were members of Parliament and we remember the story of that grouping of the Lonely Hearts. And everyone was saying, I don't want to belong there. I'm going to call the COSATU Vice President, Zingiswa Losi, who's going to pay tribute. 10 minutes, 10 minutes.
Mandla, long live the spirit of Comrade Zola Skweyiya, long live. Long live the undying spirit of Comrade Zola Skweyiya, long live. Long live the Revolutionary Alliance, long live. Ndiyabulela, mandibulise kwifamily yakwa Skweyiya na kwa Mazibuko. Ndibulise kwayesa kusekela mongameli wesizwe utata uDavid Mabuza. Ndizibulisele kwayesa kuba ngumongameli weRepublic utata uThabo Mbeki. Ndizibulisele kwisikhokelo seAlliance ngokubanzi. Ndibulise iveterans zethu ezilapha. Ndibulise imedia nabo bonke abalapha abazokuxwana emswaneni. I am requested and sent by the Congress of South African Trade Unions to pay our respect to Dr. Zola Skweyiya. COSATU says we are here also to say to the family, sikunyenani ngalemini sikhala kunyenani xana si-celebrate ubomi bukatata uZola Skweyiya. Comrades, the people of South Africa owe people like Comrade Dr. Zola Skweyiya a lot of gratitude for fighting the apartheid dictatorship without flinching. He has left an indelible mark as an activist, a diplomat, and a crusader for social justice. We salute him as the working class for his contribution in championing the cause of freedom. Comrade Dr. Zola Skweyiya belonged to those of our cadres who were made of a different material. He was an activist and a revolutionary of all times. And his views represented the true aspiration of the downtrodden. He understood the importance of aligning theory with practice, but he understood more that practice was greener than theory. He was less concerned about accurate quotations from great theoreticians, important as it is in the revolutionary practice, but he was more concerned about the articulation regarding the plight and the conditions of the working class in the townships, in the squatter camps, and in the rural areas. Comrades, Dr. Zola Skweyiya became a member of parliament in 1994, and as it was said earlier, he was then appointed as a Minister of Social Development in 1999, a post he held for the next 10 years until 2009. In social development, he spearheaded the implementation of our social protection system, including the child grant and the formation of the South African Social Security Agency. He was passionate about the protection of the elderly and held numerous outreach and engagements with older South Africans across the country. Sifuna ukuthi ke thina singabasebenzi xa sithatha umkhonto sibheka phambili asizucela isignal kuye ngoba yena wasinika kudala kodwa into esiyifunayo Minister we Social Development Mama uSusan Shabangu yi-comprehensive social security ekufuneka siqiniseke ukuba impula zikalujaca eMzantsi Afrika ziyakwazi uxhamla ukwenzela ukuba ngaba xa abantu abangathathi intweni befumaniseka begula besezilalini bakwazi ukuba ngaba kwisibhedlele sokuqala abafika badibane naso bangajikiswa kuba bona bengenayo i-medical aid kuba kaloku i-comprehensive social security idibanisa le nto ibizwa uba yi-national health insurance. Sifuna ukuthi kwakhona xana sicelebrate ubomi buka-Dr. Skweyiya sifuna uqiniseka into yoba ngaba abantwana baseMzantsi Afrika ukusukela kwimfundo ephantsi ukuyokuma kwephezulu bayakwazi ukuthi nathi siyakwazi uxhamla kwimisebenzi yakhe utata uZola Skweyiya. As abasebenzi eMzantsi Afrika, we lower our banners in honor of this courageous struggle veteran. We remain inspired by his bravery and unflinching dedication in the cause of our liberation. Hamba kakuhle mntakwenda, leta libele tshebelendle ncwadi kwangeshe mentuko mboyi solizembe siyabulela.
Enkosi Kosathu, can we have the party to come and pay its tribute?
Amanda. Viva Comrade Zola Skweyiya, viva! Long live Baba Zola Skweyiya, long live! Thank you very much, Program Director. On behalf of the SACP, we want to first greet the family, Kababu Skweyiya, Nosistutugele, Nomdeni Kamazbuku. Sibulise futhi inkokeli esikhona la, the Deputy President of the Republic, Comrade David Mabuza, former President Thabo Mbeki, Nomama Zanele Mbeki, ministers and deputy ministers of our democratic state, various delegations and leadership of religious formations, traditional leaders, leadership of our alliance movement, the leadership of our Veterans League, particularly as represented here by Comrade Mabuza Msimang. That's a special generation of our liberation struggle, that team. We want to, on behalf of the SACP, having greeted all of you present here as well, all protocol observed, to express our sincere condolences to the family, to our liberation movement, and the country as a whole. Zola Skweyiya made a significant contribution in our liberation struggle before 1994, and also participated significantly in the reconstruction and development of our country, including in the development of its constitution. In that respect, he made very colossal contribution to our revolution. We want to say, in his memory, we have made calls after his passing away that our government must establish a process to honor and to document the history of our struggle. But we felt that making this many calls without initiatives perhaps is not good enough. We had discussed with him when he was representing the 101 veterans, as well as other comrades from our stalwarts, about the need to document their contributions in our liberation struggle. He had agreed. Now we felt that in his honor, we will start a process which we're doing, although at a limited pace, to record most of our stalwarts. So those who are having time, they can keep in touch with our office. We will visit them and put their memories on record. In that way, we will be celebrating and honoring this great gallant fighter of our liberation struggle. We also wish to say, in his memory, we will mobilize our people to defend the gains of our revolution and to make sure that the liberation movement, as headed by the ANC, sustains and do not lose political power come the next general elections. This, we think, is very critical to consolidate the victories that we have scored, to deepen our revolution, to fight against the brutal system of capitalism that has sharpened our societal contradictions of class, race, and gender. We also commit to play our part in the fight against the capitalist system itself, which is the primary contradiction in society, in which the system subjects our people to ongoing poverty as well as inequality. In this current process of the fight against the struggle against capitalism, we wish to honor his own contribution, even though he was not a professed communist, but his training in the socialist countries, in the Soviet Union, in the GDR, that's the German Democratic Republic, would have no doubt imbued very important socialist values in him, which we have seen in the program when he was the Minister of Social Development, in which we also had an extensive discussion with him when the SACP complemented his work by launching the Red October campaign to focus on the needy and fighting poverty. In our discussion, he said to Comrade Blade, he is happy that for the first time, a component of the liberation movement is taking the struggle for the well-being of the poor to its logical conclusion. We launched a program, Know and Act in Your Neighborhood, and he gave us Comrade Musi from his office to work with him to make sure that we reach out every single area in our country and enlist all poor people into the social security net. In that regard, we agree with COSATU. This struggle must continue. in its honor. We also want to impel, lastly, to all our institutions of higher learning. We are glad, Professor Vili Nkomo, my chairman, in other capacities, for the work that we have already expounded you will be doing to write a book on public administration, and particularly to focus on his own contribution. That we can continue to write properly and document the history of our struggle appropriately, and to change the curriculum of our country, both from basic education to higher education. If you take the history books to date, they still condemn the liberation struggle. They still characterize even our leaders as petty prisoners. They don't appreciate that revolutionaries who were imprisoned by the apartheid system were doing so in sacrifice for the rest of us so that we can be free. We want to say to the utility detachment particularly, the MK veterans have divided or are divided among themselves. We call upon you to provide leadership in honor of Zola Skweyiya, to make sure that former combatants of our liberation struggle are united and they are able to participate also in our, now what we have launched with Charles Ngakula, we have reverted back to launching the night school, the party night schools. We are launching a massive national political education program, and members of the utility detachment and all other detachments of our movement and all our revolutionary stalwarts and veterans are invited to participate. We hope in this way we'll also be contributing in keeping his memory alive. To many others, those that have spoken, we appreciate the tributes that have been made in the name of Comrade Zola Skweyiya, a super veteran of our movement. And we should indicate that this one was the most of our ethical leaders. He was the true public servant. May his undying spirit live long. Amandla! Lalagatum Konto.
Long live the spirit of Zola Skweyiya, long live. I'm going to call Putuma to give us an item.
ngoba kusho izwi lakhe ungesabi nginawe njalo endleleni yonke yakho kukhona ngoba kusho izwi lakhe lithule sabi nginawe njalo endleleni yonke yakho igama elithi Jesu, Jesu, Amen.
Thank you very much. Now we are going to listen to our Deputy President. May I invite Deputy President David Mabuza of South Africa to come and pay tribute.
Thank you, Program Director, for the opportunity. Our sister, Zola Skweyiya, and the children, the Mazibuko family, former President Thabo Mbeki, and Usis Zanel, members of the executive in our midst, members of the judiciary, family and friends of Dr. Zola Skweyiya. Fellow South Africans, ladies and gentlemen, this past Saturday, our country hosted the world in laying to rest one of our revolutionary stalwarts, Winnie Madikizela Mandela. Hardly a week, we are here paying our last respect to another giant of our struggle, Dr. Zola Skweyiya. With his passing, our country has lost a fine revolutionary, an upright human being, and a true servant of our people. As a nation, and the African National Congress in particular, we are cognizant of the reality that this period marks a critical turning point in our political history. It is time when we are losing the generation of outstanding leaders that made an immense contribution to our freedom. In this hour of grief and loss, we find comfort that Dr. Skweyiya leaves a rich legacy behind for all of us to emulate. Throughout his life, he performed extraordinary feats because he was driven by a deep sense of social justice, care and love of his people. It was his deep hatred for racial oppression and injustice that inspired his lifelong activism. Dr. Zola Skweyiya was a very loyal cadre of the ANC. He was a deep thinker and a very rational person, and yet disciplined in his own conduct and in understanding the ANC and its reputation. As a loyal member of the ANC, he gave absolute loyalty and obedience to the leadership of his organization. But he was also an independent person, but careful nonetheless as to how he expressed himself amongst his own comrades. He was a very humble person, yet very steadfast in his principles. In valuing integrity, truth, and selflessness, he became an embodiment of servant leadership and a shining light for the destitute and marginalized of our country and the world. Trained as a lawyer, he understood the power of law as an instrument of effecting political change and advancing justice and equality. As a cabinet minister, his work was really pioneering. The many strides that we made as a country, especially on the enjoyment, promotion, and protection of basic human rights, as provided for in our Constitution, are partly due to Dr. Skweyiya's contribution and personal drive and conviction. He succeeded in serving our nation with distinction because of his love for the people was authentic. His enthusiasm for their dreams and aspiration was unsurpassed. As a living personification of fairness and justice, his demeanor exemplified a special sensitivity to the needs of the most vulnerable amongst ourselves. Because of his passion for life and deep love for his people, he became a revolutionary cadre par excellence. He epitomized a cadre of unquestionable loyalty and dedication to his people. In 1985, Oliver Tambo, whom he worked with for many years in exile, must have had in mind a good human being of the caliber of Dr. Skweyiya when he said, I quote, "The distinctive feature of the revolutionary cadre, its high level of discipline, dedication, and courage in carrying out the task assigned by the movement. Such cadres are guided by our goal of a united, non-racial, and democratic South Africa." Close quote. Dr. Skweyiya placed the integrity of the organization above all else. In executing his responsibilities, he understood that his very actions will always be mirrored against what the ANC stands for. And for this reason, his revolutionary morality always took central stage of his life and conduct. He belongs to the generation of leaders whose very being and preoccupation was nothing else but service to our people. His life of activism and revolutionary struggle for our freedom, as well as his life in public service, is papered with nothing other than conviction, compassion, and selflessness. In all likelihood, these traits and character of Dr. Skweyiya were shaped by his early years at Lovedale as a young student activist, as we have heard. Lovedale was one of the historic mission schools that became an influential center of education in South Africa. It was the heartbeat of political thought, leadership, and activism. As the hotbed of the politics of resistance, it produced prominent names in the political and intellectual history of South Africa. Among those who came from there and were among great leaders like Comrade Krisani, Comrade Thabo Mbeki, Comrade Palo Jordan, just to name a few. Today I've heard that Comrade Charles also was part of those who were there in that school. This generation of leaders remains the finest that our movement has ever produced. Here, students always participated in campaigns of the Congress movement, the boycotts and delegation of young people. Looking at this generation of young activists at the time, it is not surprising that Dr. Skweyiya was soon immersed in the politics of the African National Congress, which he died a member of. He proceeded to pursue his tertiary education at the University College of Fort Hare, which was another center of intellectual, academic, and political life in our country. In this period, between 1961 and 1964, was one of the intense repression moments in our country. The escalation of the politics of resistance led to the Rivonia trial. The banning of our organization and many liberation organizations led directly to the establishment of the armed struggle. Together with his generation of young activists, Comrade Zola was among those pioneering cadres who left the country and established the external mission of the ANC and Umkhonto Wesizwe. In 1978, Dr. Skweyiya obtained a doctorate in law in the then German Democratic Republic. He became the chief representative of the ANC to the Organization of African Unity in Addis, which is where he honed his diplomatic skills. A lot has been said about his role. After many years in Addis Ababa, the ANC appointed him to head the Legal and Constitutional Department, which a lot has been said about it. And thanks to all those comrades who served with him. This was during a very sensitive time in the life of the ANC in exile. It was a time when large numbers of young people post-1976 swelled the ranks of the ANC. By so doing, the armed wing of the ANC, Umkhonto Wesizwe, got a new lease of life. It was also the decade of fierce internal resistance in the country, and the ANC president's call then to make South Africa ungovernable was receiving an enthusiastic support in the country. It was the time when the struggle, both internally and externally, combined to exert pressure on the apartheid regime. Inevitably, it was also the time when the apartheid agents infiltrated the ANC at the camps and elsewhere. Responses to this and the need for discipline were increased within the ANC. The then president of the ANC, Oliver Tambo, entrusted Dr. Skweyiya to lead the ANC's efforts at establishing a culture of human rights, maintenance of the rule of law even within the ANC camps, and ultimately an investigation was undertaken in order to root out any violation within the ranks. This very sensitive task was handled by Comrade Zola with all the dignity and understanding. He was known to be the one who investigated all complaints. Later, he was entrusted with the duty to establish the ANC's own commission on the Constitution as we prepared to come back home. Upon his return to South Africa in 1990, he played a pivotal role in the negotiations for a democratic South Africa. When the ANC got into power, we had inherited a very fragmented, unaccountable governance system that consisted of separate administration for different racial groups. As our first democratic public service and administration minister, he championed the cause for a developmental state. A lot has been said about this assignment. It was under his sterling leadership that our government began restructuring that fragmented public service into an instrument of transformation. It should not be lost in our memory that we inherited a public service that was skewed, meant to serve few people. It was under Dr. Skweyiya that we began reshaping the public service and administration into a single one that serves all South Africans with dignity. Our archives show that by the time we came into power, there were few female leaders in the whole of the public service. It was under him that we began to actively recruit women into senior and top management positions in the public service. That early transformation period also means that Dr. Skweyiya had to build a united and non-racial, very efficient, ethical public service to replace a public service whose composition and content had characterized the corruption of the apartheid state. He remained motivated by the ideals of inclusion and tolerance. That is why there were no witch hunts, no paging of skilled, experienced personnel. Later, as Minister of Social Development, his concern for the poor and the downtrodden was evident. He worked tirelessly to ensure that the dignity of the recipients of social support from the state were respected and honored. When he championed an expanded social protection program, he understood that this intervention was not an end in itself. To him, it was one whose importance lay in bringing hope to the destitute of our people. He understood that even though the road to total emancipation of our people was long, they needed to have faith that their own government would not forsake them. Consistently humble, yet straightforwardly fearless to defend the rights of the elderly and children. He understood the plight of the poor and could easily relate to its nature and form. Dr. Skweyiya understood that the arrogance of leadership serves no purpose in the advancement of people's hope and aspiration, but a source of social distance and an evil seed for trust deficit. To best honor the legacy of this gentle giant of our struggle for freedom, we must agree that arrogance of leadership must give way to humility. The loss of our stalwart is as painful as the loss of one's piece of the body, and we are poorer without his presence, we are poorer without his wisdom. He leaves a very rich legacy of intellectual rigor, of social activism. He's truly a man of honor. For our part, we must acknowledge where we veered off the road and did not do things the right way. Dr. Skweyiya detested cliques and factions and was known always to stand above all such formations within the ranks. He expressed uneasiness with the development in the South African government. So concerned was he that he lent his support to the community of stalwarts and veterans of the ANC and was a signatory to their document entitled "For the Sake of Our Future." At the sunset of his life, with such a stand, he lamented that we need leaders of this beloved movement to tone down their hostility. He despised the purging of comrades by dominant factions within the movement, and he bemoaned gatekeeping, disunity, and corruption. Together with other veterans, a door was shut for him to openly engage on issues of concern at the time. As the leadership, our preoccupation with our own sense of insecurity rendered him and other veterans invisible. Still, he placed his hopes in the general membership of this organization. He kept the faith that in the branches, brave and courageous men and women will be awakened to renew and unite this organization of ours and our country. As we mourn his passing, we wish to assure his spirit and the entirety of the veterans of the ANC that we regret some of the omissions we have committed ourselves in the service of our people. Want to assure his spirit that the organization he so loved and dedicated his entire adult life to is on an irreversible path of renewal as the true and honest servant of our people. As our journey to the healing of wounds take us to other departed stalwarts of our movement, like Oliver Tambo, Walter Sisulu, Chris Hani, Winnie Madikizela Mandela, Govan Mbeki, Alfred Nzo, we surrender to their grace and care, the hand of their comrade in arms, Dr. Zola Skweyiya. We trust they will give him the comradely embrace he might have missed from us as his comrades. We hope they will find a way of telling him that we heard his cry, we felt the pain of a distinguished veteran who dedicated his life to this organization, the African National Congress. We finally felt the pain of a towering patriot whose disappointed stare spoke volumes about how, as leaders, had forsaken our sincerity, how we have forgotten our mission, and in the process had gone astray. We heard and saw his frustration about a leadership that had become blind to the suffering of the people and became deaf to the cries of our society. Until the end of time, he maintained his faith in the unity of the working class and its ability to organize itself to reclaim its movement to advance a pro-poor program of fundamental social change. Yet in his tone and gesture, we still found a measured human being embodying revolutionary discipline, humility and respect for those he disagreed with. Even late in his life, he remained stern in appearance and tone, but caring and compassionate in attitude. He might have been disappointed, but he was not bitter and paralyzed. Perhaps losing hope at times, but certainly never despairing. In honor of his memory, the veterans and stalwarts of the ANC should never again feel they are treated with disdain and respect and disrespect. We'll jealously guard our cohesion as a democratic state and at all times the unity of our movement. We will protect the gains we have made in protecting the interests, in promoting the interests of the poor. We will continue to improve the quality of service delivery to our people. We have no doubt that Dr. Skweyiya's departure in this world, he was satisfied of the progress that we have made as government in the provision of the many services that our people need. In the provision of houses, in the provision of water, sanitation, electricity, we have made progress, but we are not there yet. We will not cease to work to place the people first in the workings of our government. We will always care for the destitute and ensure that no one is left behind and no child goes to bed hungry. We shall continue to pursue the vision of attaining a united, non-racial, non-sexist, just and a prosperous society. This is what the African National Congress stands for. On the passing on of Dr. Skweyiya must rise a unique moment, the kind that Amika Cabral termed the constructive emulation. As he explained, Cabral meant competition, but for the well-being, not for the stomach, for us to serve our party and our people. Our country needs new cadres within this constructive emulation who will work to undo one another in the service of our people. We need to undo one another in compassion, in love, and support for one another, just as Dr. Skweyiya and various others selflessly did for all of us, paying a huge sacrifice on our behalf. In his memory, our young people must always live in hope that in this giant, they have inherited a country that is filled with many possibilities. Their access to free education opens doors for all to pursue their dreams in the fields of their choices. In his name and in the name of our hard-earned democracy, We must condemn the continuing violence against women and children and the ill treatment of our older persons. As a champion of social development, this is the vision that this icon of our struggle and the servant of our people held so dear in his heart. To the Skweyiya family, please receive again our heartfelt condolences. May the good Lord save you from unending sorrow and keep you in the palm of his hand. May you gain strength even in this difficult hour of pain. I want to thank the family for sharing this gentle giant with all of us and for allowing him to serve humanity in the best way that he could. To Oliver Tambo, as you hold Dr. Skweyiya's hand tightly, may you whisper to his caring ear the Irish blessing. May the road rise up to meet you. May the wind always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face, the rain fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. We salute you, gentle giant of our struggle for freedom. May your revolutionary soul rest in peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Deputy President, for those words. We have almost come to the end of our memorial service. Take this opportunity to thank all of you for making sure that we celebrate, we mourn, but also celebrate our own leader, our own veteran. I'm now going to call upon Mbulelo Musi to pass a vote of thanks on behalf of the family.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Program Director, but most importantly, thanks to the family for giving me a very short assignment to say just 2 words, thank you. But as protocol would dictate, I must qualify who I thank. So allow me to do that. I'm truly humbled for having been given this opportunity to thank everybody. Let me start by saying, Siyabulela Boleta, Omboyi, Okwangeshi, Omtwakwenda, Olibele, Omazibuku, Omakhathini babaqulusi, Okhondlo, Omvelasi, Onzima, Ohlatikhulu, Omanzezulu. We thank you for having shared a life so well lived, the finest sign of the soil, Dr. Zola Skweyiya with us. We heard the grandchildren crying, missing the love he gave them. We had Mamu Nontobeko talking about how family loved each other, including how Zola loved them. But even in his love, you were prepared to share him with us. Thank you very much. Let me also thank the Deputy President of the country for delivering his eulogy on behalf of the presidency, but by extension also thank the President in absentia for declaring a funeral Kapu Zola a state funeral category 1. I think it is befitting of a man with such an illustrious contribution to the liberation of our country and the democratization of our society. Also, a special thank you goes to our former president, Thabo Mbeki, and Mam Zanele. In all your heavy schedules, you saw it fit to come and bid farewell to the finest son of the soil. Ministers, deputy ministers, and all dignitaries here who we know that in the ordinary scheme of things would have been doing other tasks, but you felt you should come and grace the occasion. We thank you very much. I thank the public servants in their diversity, DGs and them. I also thank all of you for having come here to come and bid farewell to Zola. I thank all the speakers who spoke, and I think captured in a very articulate way the life and times of Zola, both as a freedom fighter and a revolutionary, as well as a social justice champion who championed the cause of the poorest of the poor, people with disability, children who were living in destitution, older persons. He gave voice where there was no voice. He was an advocate of social justice for those who had lost hope, and he gave them hope at all times. Let me also thank the cultural activists and the musicians who, with their melodious voices, gave us solace and comfort in this hour of pain. Lastly, I want to say thank you, Zola, for being who you were. As your spokesperson, and I think I'll be articulating, or your former spokesperson rather, I will be articulating the feeling of all those who worked under you, your great leadership. We thank you for taking the poorest and put them in the center of development in South Africa. We thank you for bringing us together. And to you I say, not long ago you were among the counted. Today you lie cold in body, but true to the spirit of all our yearnings. Rest your bones, warrior, with this message. It was not in vain. I thank you.
Thank you, Comrade Mlelo, for those words.
All right, so we're going to leave that special memorial service that you've been watching, all in the name of Dr. Zola Skweyiya, who died last week on the 11th of April, just 3 days before his 76th birthday. Friends, family, former colleagues.
Invitations to attend the funeral on Sunday from the presidency. They know themselves. Accreditation is going to be, it's done at, did I say Sunday? My apology for Sunday to attend the funeral. Saturday, it's a reflection of the new portfolio. For Saturday, the funeral will be held at 8:30. The service is going to start at 8:30. Those who've received invitations, the accreditation through those invitations is going to happen at my presidential guest house. Do we all know presidential guest house? But we call it Makhatu, presidential guest house. That's where the accreditation will be done. As we speak now, there are people who have started to do accreditation. It's going to happen from today, tomorrow, up to Saturday early morning. But also bear in mind that the service will start at 8:30 on Saturday. So we must ensure that we try to do the accreditation and get our tags timeously so as to make sure that we don't get disorganized on Saturday. May I thank all of you, thank the Skweyiya and Mazibuko family for giving us this opportunity in mourning, but also celebrating the life of Zola, who was our leader, who was our veteran, but also a humble servant of the people of South Africa. With those words, may I request all of us to remain sitting, to allow the family, the Deputy President of South Africa, former President Mbeki, to depart first, then we'll follow after them. Thank you very much.
Ngiphakamise lamehlo ami kuwe msindisi nguite mbalami ekuhambeni kwami wena walizwa izwi lomkhuleko wami. Guitar